was this always the system? Meaning, if we catch someone illegal, like I can't go to Germany, I can't go to France, and then they catch me sneaking in, and then they're going to release me into France or release me back into Germany. Who is the individual that signs off, let them go?
Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Jim Breuer.
Hey, this is Jim Brewer.
Now, howdy, Mikey.
What's going on, man?
Panic attack! Panic attack!
It's so good. So
good. Did you how'd they sound at the festival at Judas Priest? How'd they sound at the festival you were at?
They sounded great. They started off with Panic Attack.
Panic
Went straight into that.
Panic Attack!
You got another thing coming, Breaking the Law. Ended with Painkiller.
Oh, Animals, and then Motley Crue's got to go up.
Oh, it was a mass exodus after Judas Priest. I caught Motley Crue on YouTube. I watched the set. It was just as bad as you would watch it on YouTube. It's so bad.
I don't know why
It sucks to say it, but
it does suck to say it. But like, God, I don't. Whatever. You can't go up after Judas Priest.
No.
It's not happening.
Nope.
It's not happening.
Nope.
It's not. Judas Priest are monsters. I'm gonna go see him again. I'm gonna go see him again. I gotta see. I may fly. I gotta see where they're playing next. Maybe we'll do that in the podcast. Like, who wants to come join me? Go see Judas Priest that are Priest fans. I know there's some Patreon members that are.
Dude, we do a live stream.
Oh, that's a great idea. I would do that. Come to the concert with me. Do a live stream. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So great to see. I don't know how many times I don't know how much more they're gonna be touring, but whew, I don't know how he still sings like that. Anyway, today we have a subject that many people are they're alarmed, they're concerned, there's a lot, and it comes with the border. Now, the border agents are being forced to do things that they don't want to do. There was a lot going on where like suicide and this and that, and so it was pretty heavy, and the amount of people and what type of people are coming in, and so everyone's big question is why? Because what you don't see is women and children coming. They're not. You don't see many images of children fleeing here. You don't see a lot of images of that. Is South America, Mexico? I've been to Mexico many times, and they don't. I don't look like they're in turmoil. I don't live there, but I don't. They're not a civil war country. I've been to South America a couple times, and I did. Some places aren't great, but why are they fleeing to come here? Is it money? Whatever the reason is, a lot of people believe many different things. Some people think they're soldiers. They're UN soldiers or foreign soldiers for the big day to take us down. And they're setting up sleeper cells. There's many, many theories going around. Some people say it's for political reasons. They're loading everyone in to make sure they get paid, to make sure they vote so they can get millions of votes.
All right, line them up. It's election day.
Whatever the scenario is, it doesn't matter. It's happening. That's the fact. And so I don't know enough about it. I have the pleasure of bringing someone on who maybe can help us out a little bit and describe more of how the border works and what really is going on, and what in deeper aspects of what we may be watching go on right now, or feel that's going on right now. So, I know you're all feeling it. I know you're all feeling. I'm not lying to you. There is, you know me. I'm. Some will say conspiracy, whatever. I don't believe in that word. I just believe theory. Just a theory. Conspiracy means thought. That's all it is. And it became a bad word from our government to make you stop thinking. And yeah, it was conspiracy. Yeah, well, no, it's not. And I'm dead honest with you. I think I don't know if it's just for votes. I think it's for some other reason. I I don't like putting too much of that energy in that direction. But let's talk to our guest, Mr. Chris CLEM, who is the former chief patrol agent of the U.S. border for over 27 years. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, Jim, and just awesome to be here. And what a great intro! You really kind of really set the tone of what's happening. It's not a bright and sunshiny border situation we got here. It's a little ominous at times, but yeah, man, you hit all the hard points, and let's talk about it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So like, you have trafficking. You have what? So let me say now. You retired in 2022. Tell me how. First of all, just tell me, in your opinion, right now, what you think. Why is it as bad as everyone or what's being portrayed that it is? That people are just coming here and in thousands and millions? That's the
Yeah,
first question.
yeah. So that why is always difficult to explain. And I retired December 31st, 2022. So I'm just shy of 18 months after doing 27 and a half years. I started under Clinton in 1995 and worked for 5 administrations, and it was getting really good. Securing the border, numbers were low, but under this administration, a lot of things changed, and we can talk about that. But
Yeah.
to answer your question, the why, right? And you kind of went into it when you started talking about our brains are designed to kind of make reason of things, and you usually have to have facts, and somebody tells you why they're doing something. Um, there is, and I agree. I don't like using the conspiracy word because they tossed you away, but there are single adult men from ages of 18 to 35 that are coming in hundreds at a time across our border every day. They're ultimately being caught and released. There's that group, right? So that leads to that dark, nefarious type of theory. Like, okay, why are these people fleeing? And there's a saying that men leave their families when they go to war. So if they're really these asylum seekers and they're trying to get a better life and trying to find jobs, and it's so bad where they're going, where's their family? All right, so there's that piece. And then there are big factions of family groups coming in, and they're being caught and released, and so the why, it gets to the point of, I do believe that there is a group of our mindset out there that says, hey, in order to remain in power, if you're the party of power, you have to have votes, and we have to have more representatives. So there is a theory or a belief out there that they're allowing this to happen because these people are being caught and released, and you do not. The current census does not require a citizenship question, so it's based on total numbers. So if you're in a heavily blue area and you put more people there, you could, in theory, gain more representatives, so that you could, in theory, get another vote in your party's favor. Kind of a long-winded question because it's such a difficult answer. There's no silver bullet on this one, Jim, because they're not giving us the answers out of Washington, D.C. I mean,
All right. So you retired 2022. This
right?
administration started 2020. Did it start immediately?
Yeah, yeah. Let me kind of give you some context for you and the audience. Is I took over as the chief patrol agent in Yuma, Arizona, Southwest Arizona, Southeastern California was my area of responsibility. 126 linear miles of border. In October of 20, right before the election, we were averaging about 25 arrests a day in Yuma. In November, it went up to 34. I got there in December, it was hovering around 54. Remember, we had an election in November, so it went from 34 to 54. By January in Yuma alone, we went up to 119 arrests a day. And then by May, it was 500. And by the end of the year, we were averaging 1,000 arrests a day. I'm gonna explain that here in a second. In 2020, federal fiscal year 2020, there was just over 8,800 arrests in Yuma, Arizona, my little 126-mile sector. It went up to 114,000 in 21 under year one of this Biden administration, and then over 310,000 in year two in 2022. And then we ended somewhere about 160 something thousand in 23. This all started once this administration was elected and put into office, and there were 94 executive orders signed by the president beginning on day one over the first, I think, 30 or 60 days of his and after inauguration that impacted the border. And that was basically an invitation and a pull factor, is what we call them. Hey, reasons for people to come here. That was done really on the first few days, and the numbers don't lie. I mean, we went from 405,000 arrests nationally at the U.S. Border Patrol in 2020 to 1.66 million to 2.2 million to 2.4 million. I mean, that is done intentionally. That is done by this administration, completely reversing many of the policies from the previous administration, which was the Trump administration. And so I mean, it happened like literally right away. And yeah, it was crazy because we literally went from one of the most secure border security systems to creating huge vulnerabilities for this country.
Do you think they're paid to come here? Because that's what I don't understand either. Like once you get here, what are you doing? Because even the average person that grows up, I mean, I'm just looking at my kids trying to get jobs or whatever. What are they doing once they get here? How do they survive once they're here?
Yeah, it's a great question. So many of the migrants when they get here, they've got the money. They've been able to arrange their trips. They're coordinating with smuggling organizations. They do have a ability to sustain themselves. But one of the problems that we have is they may use a smuggling organization to get them to the U.S. border, but they ultimately become victims of trafficking because they are paying anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 a head on average to come over here, and some people are paying a lot more. And a lot of these folks don't have that kind of money. A family of four is going to cost them anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. So they end up getting put uh, into indentured servitude or prostitution. They're basically victims of trafficking to work off that debt. I mean, that is a matter of fact that happens. The other thing is there are advocacy groups and non-government organizations that are very sympathetic to this that will help fund these migrants while they're waiting for their hearings. And so they're kind of living off that. And a lot of that is reimbursed
What
through federal tax dollars.
what groups are you speaking of that would fund illegals coming in here? Do you have specific groups?
Well, there's some international ones that, international refugee
Like
groups that
who funds them? Where's that money? Is it
donate. Yeah, yes.
France? Is it Israel? Is it what countries are we talking?
So what we hear is a lot of times it's individuals like a Soros-backed organization, right? Someone who has a lot of money that has, made it very clear that they believe in this kind of, new world order and has made statements in the past about, destroying the United States. I mean, again, I don't want to sound like some, nutcase, but a lot of these groups that are funded are down there in Central America, South America, and in Southern Mexico, working with the migrants when they come in here, showing them how to get to the United States, what to say, and where to go when they get in if they don't already have a plan. And somewhere that's being funded. Again, that would not necessarily be something that I would have had, the high information on when I was chief, because I was working on the operational tactical response. But I guarantee you there are agencies in this government that are aware of what's happening. And that's, I think, the frustrating part is, why aren't we shutting that down? Why would we not, close those loopholes? Because, you have groups like, offshoots of the Red Cross that are out there on the front side doing good things for people around the world. And I'm not knocking them, but some of those subsidiaries of their groups are facilitating this flow, and it's actually putting people in harm's way. When you have non-government organizations, and I'm not saying all of them are bad, but when you have some that are fighting for migrants to come to their location and not others, you kind of start reading, hey, they're getting reimbursed, so they get dollar for dollar for everything they spend on these migrants. So that becomes a very profit-making nonprofit. So there's a lot of things that concern me about, how our government is reimbursing nonprofits who are helping this, because that becomes a pull factor. To your point, they're getting funded by tax dollars indirectly to help these migrants, give them a $500 debit card, give them a housing for the night, or buying a plane ticket if they need it to their destination. I mean, this is what's going on. And all of this is oftentimes reimbursed through Department of Homeland Security's FEMA organization, are giving money back to the communities through the non-government organizations who are funding this. So it becomes look, I'll make it even very clear about how our tax dollars are being put to use. I was spending about $450,000 a day in my sector alone to maintain a temporary, what we called a soft-sided processing facility, where we had medical, food, shower, laundry services for the migrants. My sector, and there were 6 other sectors with a very similar daily cost, so about $2.5 million a day.
Jeez.
Yeah, exactly, right? Then we would process them, and they would be released because there was no room at ICE to hold them. So they would go to the non-government organizations who were getting reimbursed for the monies they spent to take care of the migrants during the 12 to 24 hours they may have been in there. So if they bought them a plane ticket, they get reimbursed for that. If they just meals, food, whatever, they get reimbursed for that. All right. So, and then you have sanctuary cities like New York City and Chicago and other places that have demanded that the U.S. government reimburse them upwards of $5 billion in the president's budget for the monies they're spending to shelter the migrants in those sanctuary cities. So in theory, a good portion of the migrants that entered illegally, the U.S. taxpayer could be paying for them 3 times just on their care alone. Again, upon apprehension, upon release to the NGO, and then upon arrival at a sanctuary city. 3 times. Now, I'm not saying every one of the 8 million people, but a good portion of them we have paid for 3 times. And that's not sustainable, and that's not fair when you have homeless veterans, homeless children. We've got issues going on in our own country, but yet we're spending all this money on people that didn't even have the legal right to come here. They entered illegally. I want to stress that. If Border Patrol arrested you, you broke the law. Regardless of your intent, you broke the law.
So
Yeah.
if we were having beer or whatever at a couple cocktails,
Yep.
and we have no recordings, and this is non-fact, this is just I have had friends say this pub talk, just nonsense civilian pub talk. And I'm asking you point blank, what do you really think? This is not a fact. You just give an opinion. What do you really think is going on?
I think that there is some kind of attempt to overthrow from within, implode us to where we end up going into a one-party society, and they want to rewrite this Constitution. You hear certain politicians talk about the Constitution is outdated. It needs to be redone. Okay, Well, when you hear those things and you see what's happening, it sounds like that's what they're trying to do, is playing a marathon and not a sprint. Like, this will take time and we'll just keep chipping away, because again, as I mentioned early on, none of this makes sense. You wouldn't do this anywhere in your personal life. Why was our government doing this to us?
So
You know?
if we were to ask the question of, is this the end of the empire and this is the final takeover, would you say that's a great possibility if we were just talking off the record?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, first of all, the way my brain works, 27 plus years of law enforcement, you have plan and contingency, right? You have a plan before the first shot's fired, and you have a plan after the first shot's fired. We have to be planning that there is a nefarious, thinking and process going on to try to possibly end what has been the longest running republic on this planet. There's people that outwardly, hate America. And so why, for us to just ignore that thought, I wouldn't let it I wouldn't obsess with it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change my life about it, but I certainly wouldn't ignore it, because that's what's happened.
Well,
We've thought no one's going to ever mess with America. And now we look at it and go, what the heck's going on? So,
and I'm all American too, but I also see the wrath that we have sprung across the world,
Yeah.
which we may all say was in the name of freedom. Clearly, it never was, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
let me ask you this: out of all the people, have when you're in that position? I mean, you started with the Clinton Foundation. Do you meet the presidents, each president? Do you?
No.
No, right?
No, in fact, I saw Obama, when I was working up in Washington, D.C., the motorcade came by. I did meet Trump. He came down.
Yeah.
He came down, not for the border, though. I was the deputy chief. I was the number 2 for El Paso back in when they had that mass shooting down there at the Walmart, and our teams were one of the first responders. And so when the president came down there, I got to kind of do the hand nod. I mean, he was a few feet from me, but I let my agents do the handshaking. So you don't really meet the president. We have transition teams that work with the White House staff that come in that kind of explain and get everybody up to speed whenever there's a new administration. But I do want to note something you mentioned about. I will also say this. I agree with you that not everything that we've done to expand democracy around the world has been met with open arms, right? We've created some of these,
but even
monsters,
the word,
right?
but even not to interrupt you, not the word democracy.
Yeah.
To me, the word democracy, we're not a democracy. We've been a
Right, we're a
republic. So when we say it's all in the name of democracy, if anything, I'm against democracy. Why should we all be following a small group of people just because, like, if 51%, a democracy is a failure, in my personal opinion. So I don't like when we say, "Oh, we're doing democracy." Well, then you're not doing it. I always thought, I saw a great thing the other day where it's like, if we were a different America, we'd be invading this America to help save this America, if that's who we truly are and were. Like, if America says who they truly are, oh, we're here with freedom and blah blah blah, and we're gonna fight against this, we'd invade our country right here, right now. We'd overthrow Biden. We'd overthrow this government so we can save and free the American people. And I thought that was a pretty powerful thing that I saw floating around.
Yeah, I love conversations that cause you to pause, like statements like that, to think about that. And that was one of them right there. Like, I just kind of paused and went, huh, you know what? You're right. I think there'd be, we'd be lining up to say, hey, you're doing this. You're censoring here, or you're spending money on facilitating wars around here. Yeah, we're going to end this right now. I mean, yeah, I love that. That's always how I've been as a person and as a leader in the organization. And bring me a thought, and if it causes me to pause, then now we're going to have a conversation, because that's how you learn. Number one, it's also how you avoid groupthink and really kind of start getting good ideas, so you can settle on the best idea. Is causing people to not necessarily change their thinking, but change how they listen and see other points of view. So maybe you could change that thought or thinking process. I love that idea because I think there's a lot of truth to that. Is when you look at how we have meddled in so many others' business. I go back to when we were in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we would see many of our congressional representatives standing up and talking about how the women were oppressed over there, and it's oppressed based on our ideals. That's been their religion for thousands of years. How do we go over there and tell somebody you're doing it wrong? That's where I might get it. That's where we're the ugly Americans, and kind of leads to your point. And what I was talking about is, yeah, we may have gone over there to stop an evildoer, but then we start meddling and try to change their culture. And guess what? That's their culture based on their religious beliefs for thousands of years. Who are we to go tell them who they're to believe in and how they're supposed to follow? So
Right.
I'm with you on that.
And even when they say, when you say evildoer,
Yeah.
as you mentioned George Soros, I'm starting to notice that a lot of Americans, a lot of regular people are now understanding, they look at things like Afghanistan, Iraq, and evildoers. None of the evildoers are in the same banking system as America and as Britain and all the big powers. So are they really evil? And like I said, I always put it out there. I don't why you say Bin Laden does this, but then you go in Iraq and then you go in Afghanistan for 20 years. I think a lot of human beings, not only in America, but the world, are going, wow, that was one big ass lie that we sacrificed real lives for. And we're not sure. And who walked away? Who scaved away? The big boys that were in the administration and making lots of money, doing all the things. So there's a lot of untrust going on in the country because they're discovering these things now. So that's why it's important to understand the border. Is our own government setting up our own demise on purpose because they're not American? A lot of Americans don't know a lot of our administration has dual citizenship in another country. And I don't know if other countries where their leaders have dual citizenship with other countries. I thought once you're in one country, you're just all American. You're born and raised in America. But when you find out how much of our government officials have dual citizenship, it really, it's very alarming. It's extremely alarming. So that's why I've tried to find out, like, who really is funding who runs the Red Cross, who's funding these immigrants. And I don't know if you have, do you get to the point, Chris, when you finally find an illegal trying to get in, right? Do you ever have a thing? Do you interrogate them? Is that your job, or you oversee? Have you ever been in a scenario where this guy came from XYZ and took money from XYZ and his plan was to do ABC?
Yeah. So and we all do that, and I did that for many years as I was going up through the ranks. Right, as chief, I didn't do that, but I would read the reports, and I can tell you that that type of scenario plays out probably daily. By our agents, right? And we have, we're one wheel in the enforcement cog. We make the arrest, the spidey senses go off. Then we have investigative agencies or intel agencies that would, or our intel people assigned to us, will come out and start doing some of that interrogation because, we're in the people business, and just any law enforcement's in that. You kind of figure things out, right? And when somebody is telling you a line,
Right.
or you have information or intelligence about people coming from certain areas using certain routes, and wow, this person came from this area. Their plane ticket shows that they went this route. This is somebody we need to pull aside and ask some questions. And I can tell you, in no uncertain terms, most of that's not going to unfold in the custody of the Border Patrol. It's going to end up being when they're turned over to the FBI or ICE's investigation, Homeland Security investigations, where they're going to do. The investigators are going to take that information and kind of connect those dots. I can tell you that after, and we mentioned it after 9/11,
Yeah.
there was a lot of that, right? You had a lot of people on expired visas that were showing up that made no sense. I can tell you, and it's been, a long time, and it's nothing classified, so I'm not speaking out of turn. I
Right.
would never do that. But this person was in Michigan on a visa, a student visa, who was working at a gas company, a large gas company on an expired visa, drove to California, went to a party, met 3 other people that were heading to Atlanta to set up a kiosk for a friend, and got a ride from California to on their way to Atlanta. I was working in Sierra Blanca, Texas, at a checkpoint station
Yeah.
when we encountered them. They were all expired visas. This was not too long after 9/11.
Mm.
So I mean, I don't ever know. I know that they were not released. They were detained and they were held, and many agencies wanted to talk to them because none of that made sense, right? So those things do happen, and you do get people coming across the border. I think it's important to kind of level set some things real quick. A
Yeah.
lot of the numbers we're seeing
Yeah.
are just turning themselves into us. Like they're in wanting to be caught because they know they've got a 99% chance that within 2 or 3 days they are released into the United States. There is also
Can I stop you
1.8
there for 1 second? Can I stop you?
Please do.
What? Who gives the go? Was this always the system? Meaning, if we catch someone illegal, like I can't go to Germany, I can't go to France, and then they catch me sneaking in, and then they're going to release me into France or release me back into Germany. Who is the individual that signs off, let them go?
Yeah, so it's a little bit deeper than that, but it comes down from directly out of the White House to the Secretary of Homeland Security, who establishes the policy of who we're going to catch and release. And then it comes down to capacity, because the way it's supposed to work, Jim, is Border Patrol catches you. If you are not from a contiguous country like Mexico or Canada, then we have to hold you for your removal proceedings so you can see a judge. You're supposed to go into immigration detention to have your initial hearing. That's ICE ERO, enforcement removal operations. But their funding and their capacity has been cut in half, and we've had so many people come in that there is no room to hold people. So if they don't have a criminal warrant or a immigration history that shows that they've been deported multiple times, they are going to be released because there has no place to hold them. And that has been kind of the breaking point over the last 4 to 6 years, is we don't have enough space and people keep coming. And instead of putting them on a plane immediately and deporting them back, they're getting a hearing. They're claiming asylum so they can get multiple bites at the apple, and then we're having to release them. It was more of the exception than the norm back in the day when I started early on, that someone would be released and let go. They were put in an immigration camp. They would have their initial hearing with a judge, and the judge would determine if they're going to get relief or they're going to be ordered removed. And usually they were gone within a month, and we didn't have that capacity issue. Majority of people were just from Mexico and Central America. Now it's a worldwide problem. 170 different countries last year were apprehended coming into the southwest border. I mean, so we can't just send them on the next plane over to Asia or to Europe. So it becomes a capacity issue, and that comes back to directly out of Washington, D.C., the White House Domestic Policy Council office directing how they're going to manage immigration. and and that's why, again, you can come over here illegally if you are not a criminal with a history or a known terrorist organization. The likelihood of you being released is over 90% that you'll be released within 2 or 3 days, because they won't have room to hold you, and you would not be considered a priority because you wouldn't be a national security or public safety threat at the time of arrest. And that is what drives Border Patrol agents crazy. That's what tanks the morale. That's what leads to not feeling of value or worth when you come to work. You mentioned it in the opening before I came on about the increase in suicides. I mean, this is what plays into law enforcement's head when they don't feel like they have a purpose, because the powers that be have directed them to do other than truly enforce the law. So there's not one single person that says release them. It's actually the directive coming down from policy out of the White House. So I guess you could say, the Office of the President or Domestic Policy Council directing through the Secretary of Homeland Security. But yeah, there's people that actually sign off on it because that's how the process works. But the direction is coming from the top down. That make a little bit of sense?
Oh no, it makes it
You don't
does.
have to agree with it, but hopefully I can explain.
No, it makes sense. But we all want names. That's the issue.
Yeah. Well,
We
yeah.
want
So Joe Biden, Kamala Harris,
names.
whoever is the director. It used to be Susan Rice was the former director of domestic policy. She's not there. I forget who replaced her.
So
And
who's
then
it now?
Alejandro-
Who's it now?
I don't know who the domestic policy council director is now. It was Rice, and then she left a few months back. But Marcus is still the secretary. He's the cabinet secretary. He's the one that pulls the strings on anything that's to do with DHS, and that's border security. So he could reroute funds to increase capacity. He could shut down asylum loopholes. He could implement the policies that we had in place. Look, he's on the record. There's a video floating around social media where he is talking and says they have ended so many of Trump's policies and orders. It's too many to list. Yet here we are with all the problems. And again, Trump, his policies, I always said they were clunky but effective. They worked in controlling the border and making us less vulnerable at the border. They were very difficult to start because there was a lot of people that would hear the order, hey, we're going to do this, and they would start trying to implement it, and it hadn't gone through all the formal process. So we did a lot of start-stop to get things done. So again, clunky, but highly effective. But this administration was doing victory laps on reversing so much of it. And now look at them. They're in crisis mode, finally admitting it's a crisis. Hopefully it's the fourth quarter and they're trying to do a Hail Mary with some of the things they're implementing right now. But it's made us all vulnerable. It's made the country vulnerable. And again, leads to some of the things we've already talked about. You've got people from over 170 different countries that have come over here. I mean, that kind of leads to, some of the, concerns that we have is what's going to happen. What's the future of this country going to look like down the road? Not from a color or skin, a language they speak, but from an ideals or where we're going.
Right.
What's going to be acceptable and what's not. Some of the things we see that are happening daily were anomalies. It may make a headline once a year. Now it's every day protests and riots and craziness. I mean, it's demands by migrants in Denver saying, you will give us the following. You were just entered illegally 3 days ago. How are you demanding from a government what you're going to do? Again, like you mentioned, try that in France or Germany next time you go overseas.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when, all right, let me ask you this. Where do you think this is going? Like when does this end? Does it end? And how does it end? How does it end?
Yeah. Great question.
Like we know what we can. I know I got to get a new car, but what really is? If I pulled you aside, I said I need you to come up with a tactical defense for this, so we can stop this right here, right. And before I even ask that, what's the most popular? Where do they come from the most? You say 170 countries? What's the top 3 countries that are flooding the gates?
So Venezuela is one of them. Colombia was one of them. Central America countries are starting to tick up again. China is another one. We've had 24,000 Chinese nationals just in the first 6 months of this fiscal year. Over 24,000. Yeah, yeah. So 450 were apprehended in 2022, I believe, and then it went up to 24,000 last year, and we've exceeded 24,000 so far this year.
Chinese,
So that's
China.
yes, yeah. So talk about, again, one of the things we've talked about.
And that's just what you apprehended.
Yeah.
That's just what
So
you caught.
there's still a whole bunch of people we don't know. I think I actually have some of the numbers you're looking for. Let's see if I can find that real quick. But yeah, that's a big anomaly, right? Going from single digits, like I literally went probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my career, never caught a Chinese national entering the country illegally, and then now I think last year was over 24,000, but the year before it was 450 or something, very little like that, and then to jump up, it's unbelievable the numbers, how they've come in. I'm trying to see if I have the latest and greatest, but there's a you can get onto the Customs and Border Protection CBP. That's like Charlie Bravo Papa.gov, and you can navigate through that. And people can go in there and look under news releases and then statistics, and it will show you all the data, the things that I'm talking about.
Make sure you put that up, Mike.
Yeah, it's where they can go and I just don't have the ready information.
That's okay.
But I do know that the big concern, and it's really happening 200 miles from me. I live in Tucson now, but in Jacumba, California, and San Diego, California is where they've surpassed. They're the busiest sector in the nation right now. Everything's migrated from Texas into West Texas into Arizona. Tucson sector right here in my backyard is I think number one overall in apprehensions, but just got surpassed for the monthly apprehensions in San Diego, but also leads in the gotaways. And those, just for you and the audience, that's my biggest concern, because the people we catch, at least we have an opportunity to control that. Even if I don't like how they're controlling it, they're letting them go.
Yeah.
But when every criminal category, and you can find that on that website, in every criminal category that we consider a criminal alien under this administration has doubled or quadrupled since the previous 4 years under President Trump. So if we're catching 20 people this year with homicide records, statistically, what are we missing in that 1.8 million gotaways? Because why on earth, under the way things have unfolded on this administration, would you avoid the Border Patrol unless you have a criminal record? You have, you're probably from Mexico and you'll get sent right back, or you have nefarious plans. You're bringing in fentanyl, you're bringing in guns, you don't need to bring in guns. We've got plenty of guns around here, but you're doing something wrong, because otherwise, if you are just trying to get a better life, just turn yourself in one of these, hundreds of gaps that are along the border, and Border Patrol will get to you, and you'll be likelihood of being processed and released is very, very high. So when people are avoiding us and they're evading us, that's a problem. And gotaways are recorded every day, and they're reported under a Government Reporting Accountability Act called the GEPRA. I don't know exactly what it stands for, but it's GPRA. And that is on record, and that is somebody that we have detected. Either we saw them, we saw their footprints, or we had them on video camera, and we never resolved that individual or that group. We didn't catch them. They didn't go back to Mexico. They got away. That's over 1.8 million just in the last 3.5 years. And we also know there's a percentage of unknown. Like we never got to an area of the border to know what even happened. So that's a concern, and that's what should be a concern for everybody, because even the ones we're letting go have committed some heinous crimes. What are the ones that we don't even know about?
So when in the past, was it the norm to fly illegal immigrants to other states? Because New York has had supposedly people dropping them off in the middle of the night, and there's videos, and there's a lot of the workers were really distraught over it, where they see him 2, 3 in the morning landing, and A, have you seen that before? B, is that really going on where they're shipping them, literally shipping them and using our money to fly them to different states? And again, where's that money, and who gives the go ahead for something like that?
Yeah, so there's a couple areas to address on that. It never was the norm. Okay, that's the first and foremost. That was never the norm. Many years ago,
Is this the
on the
first
tail.
administration?
Yeah, well, this is the first one that it's happening the way it's happening now, where people are arriving and all over, right?
Right.
In the past, on the tail end under the Obama administration, when we first had a huge influx of family units, mainly from, and family units is at least an adult with a
Yeah.
child. It could
Yeah.
be, it could be
Sure.
2, it could be 4. Um, um, then we were flying them from different parts of the border to other parts of the border for processing, because down in South Texas they were overwhelmed. So there was 2 or 3 flights a day landing with 300 people in El Paso and 300 people in San Diego to just process, and then
Wow.
they would ultimately get released, right? So that was happening, and then that kind of calmed down. I don't remember a lot of that happening. There was some internal shuffling during a few years under the Trump administration, because there was some funding issues that the House was holding out on. But the real thing that started all this happened under this administration. It really started with Texas and Arizona governors. Like, they were so upset, and they still are upset. Well, not in Arizona because they changed the governor, but the communities couldn't absorb the migrants. In Yuma, that town year round, most of the year is about 100,000 people. Now we have another 50,000 winter visitors come down there during the winter months. Um, but I told you, we caught over 100,000, over 300,000. That community does not have a bus station. It has one airport that has 2 flights out a day. They
Hmm.
cannot handle that. So they were being bused to Phoenix by the non-government organization, who would get reimbursed by our tax dollars. And then the Governor Ducey's like, hey, we're not going to have these people sit here and take up our town. So he started busing to different locations, and that was under state dollars.
Mm.
Governor Abbott to this day continues to do that,
Mm.
and busing them and flying them places to these sanctuary cities, because and by the way, no, they're all signing consent forms. They're getting on these buses on their own, like they're willing to sign consent for a
Right.
free plane ticket or free bus ride.
Right.
That is one area, right? That's like, these people have been processed, released, but the cities, and at least run by some of those state governors, were like, they're not going to stay here. They're not going to absorb all my community services.
Right.
They don't
Right.
intend to stay here. So let's just facilitate their movement to a region they want to go. Now, what you have also happening, and there's some difference of opinion on where the funding is coming from, but there is this app, the CBP One app. Again, that's Customs and Border Protection, CBP
Mm-hmm.
app, that people that want to come to the United States, regardless if they have a legitimate claim or not, can apply, and then they can get a flight into the United States as long as they have an application in. And that's one of the things that's a big concern, where they have flown over 300,000 people into the United States from countries. They just fly directly into the United States because they applied on an app. And that is being challenged in courts as possibly unlawful. But that is where you're hearing some of these flights coming in all over around the country. And then lastly, there is the government moving people from facility to facility. That's happening in the hours of darkness, where they may be a unaccompanied minor facility in Florida that's over capacity,
Mm.
and they put them on a plane and fly them to, another state in the union.
Right.
And that's happening, and that is taxpayer money moving people around. Those are the 3 kind of areas that I know of when it comes down to flying people, under the cover of darkness. And that's all orchestrated either by the state government, who is really kind of trying to thumb their nose at the administration, saying you've got to fix this problem, and you're a sanctuary city and you want these people, here you go. You got that group. Then you have the CBP One app group that are flying in, and then you have the internal shuffling that is still going because there's no capacity anywhere. So they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but it's all fronted by our tax dollars at either a state level or a federal level.
And who'd you say was the main? Like, there's multiple, but you're like, what is the main person that runs all that? You said it before. You said like a couple.
That would be the secretary. The secretary of Homeland Security is overseeing all. That's Alejandro Mayorkas.
So the American people want to know, like, who do they reach out to start? It's Alejandro.
Yeah, so he's the guy that blames Congress and should say Congress should fix all this. But let me tell you something about Mr. Mayorkas.
Congress.
He was the director. He was the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services from 2008 to 2012, the first 4 years under President Obama.
Okay.
And from 2012 to 2016, the second term of President Obama, Mayorkas became the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security. Okay. So there's 8 years that he had direct oversight of our immigration system in one way, shape, or form or another. Now he has been the Secretary of Homeland Security for President Biden, and we're entering year 4.
He wasn't during Trump. Trump didn't hire him.
No, he's a political appointee, so he's out with the. So he's been in charge of our immigration
for almost 12 years,
system
right?
For almost 12 years, but yet he is the first person to say Congress needs to pass bills and pass laws. I would tell you that the system is broken, and Mr. Mayorkas has been in charge of it for 12 of the last 16 years. And I think it starts with him. And that's why, I wasn't a big fan of impeachment because I knew it wasn't going to get impeached in the Senate by him. The House impeached him. The Senate didn't take it up. That's just fodder and kabuki theater for the media and the Congress. But he's had a direct say-so in everything that's happened at our border 12 out of the last 16 years. So it starts with him. And, he's got an interesting past. He's I think a first generation Cuban migrant. Family came over. He was a U.S. prosecutor, assistant U.S. attorney. He could have been one of the best Homeland Security directors with his immigration story, but he won't get that title based on everything that's happened under his direct command now.
Well, this is not a fact, but when you really think about things, in my opinion, if you think about organized crime does its best to infiltrate everything. And first they start small. In the street, and they do what they got to do. And then it's only a matter of time they start making so much money that they start paying off all the locals. They pay off the cop, turn the other way, turn off the judge to turn the other way. And now they're on the payroll. And then it turns into, we're going to send you to school so you can become a professor and start running some of the school stuff, and then judges and this and that and that. And I truly believe our so-called government, the ones we trust, the ones we pretend that we're voting for, that we think really we're voting in, CIA, FBI, all the bad guys have infiltrated and taken over. And people don't realize the takeover doesn't last. It doesn't happen in a year. It doesn't happen in 6 months. Like you're talking about this guy, almost 12 out of the last 16 years. If all this started 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it's now come to the head where it all makes sense. They set up our government. They infiltrated every Congress member. They pay off the FBI. They've infiltrated the CIA. They've infiltrated everything, and we just run with our flags, and we have 4th of July, and we pretend we're the best and we're all protected. We are at the point in history where the ones that we thought were protecting us are the true possible enemies, and they're in our house. They're passing laws. They're pretending they're for us. They're pretending they're debating for us, and none of us believe any of them anymore. I know I don't. I don't trust one single human being. There's a guy. There was a minute where I was like, oh, I like this guy, this Jim Jordan guy. Then I realized, oh, he's got dual citizenship in Israel. No, out. Oh, I love this guy. Oh, so he's full. Oh, Mike, this new speaker. Well, he just sent money to Ukraine. Blah blah blah. They're all. And the part that I just don't know what to do is because I don't believe we're not violent human beings. And we've been fattened up like fat cats. We're all fat cats. We got our Super Bowl and our ball teams and our the Kardashians, and we sit our asses home and we get fat watching television and drinking and enjoying lives. And what better time to take advantage of you when that's what you're doing most of your time? And I don't know where it's all going.
Yeah.
I like the information. I don't know what the answer is. If you were to take over, if we were going to go, you know what, Chris Clem, you've been around for over 30 years, dabbling into border, and you've seen so much come and go, and you've seen administrations come and go. If we were to point you right here, right now, as the leader of the Republic of the United States, not the incorporated, which no one knows we're incorporated, not the
Right.
corporated United States that's run from an outside country. DC is not run by the United States. Another thing America needs to know. What do you, if we were to hire, we're like, you know what, Chris is our leader. Do you have thoughts of like, Jim, right out of the gate, we're going to do X, Y, and Z? Do you know what would they be, Chris, if you
Well,
have any?
first of all, we'd have one heck of a concert, and I let you go ahead.
I'll run it, man. You tell me.
Yeah,
You tell me what bands to get in. I'll get them.
yeah. Well, it's going to be an all-day thing, right? Okay, so because there's too many good bands out there.
Yeah.
No, I would. And I appreciate the question because it's again we're natural. Part of being human is being a nurturer. It's supposed to be taken care of. We're not, violence is the last thing that we're designed to do, but when
Correct.
we do it right, for the right reasons. I'm looking at this from a border security perspective, and the first thing I'm going to do is we are going to finish what we started under the previous administration, which was a culmination of decades of Border Patrol agents saying, here are the requirements to secure our border. This is a national security issue. I would make this not an immigration issue. This is a security issue. I would finish the wall where it makes sense, not a 2,000-mile wall along the southwest border,
Right.
but where the agents need it to do their job. I would finish the technology plan, how we intended to do. We've got areas where we installed cameras, but this administration wouldn't let us plug them in. I mean, it's ridiculous. The agents asked for this stuff, and it was our job as leaders to give them those requirements. And President Trump made that happen. But I don't agree with a wall everywhere. So we would find out where it made sense to where it could, reduce the vulnerabilities. I would put policies in place that would encourage, the lawful migration for those that really, two reasons. One, you're truly being persecuted and you need to flee, and we're willing to help you. But I would also put in very strict guidelines so we can make sure that we can attract and attain the best and brightest to come over here to help us with the immigration side of things, if for work and economy, if our own labor market can't sustain it or is not willing to go to work. But most importantly, I would make this about national security, and I would secure that border to make sure that our local leaders, our local communities, our hospitals, our schools, our small business have the safety that they need to conduct their daily lives so they can live free, so they can try to make a better life for themselves and their community, and not, be fearful of a betrayal that has come from the White House on the security side of it. I would also really work very hard with trying to figure out, what are we going to do with these people that are here already that are causing the chaos? And we would we would figure that out, right? There is a way to go after these folks and remove them if necessary. And then I definitely would look at how are we going to protect ourselves from that foreseeable infiltration, if you will. You know, there is a swamp creature that runs around DC that needs to be beheaded. That would be the hardest fight I think anybody that was going to be in charge of, because kind of like we mentioned, this wheels have been set in motion decades ago, and so we've got to figure that out. But I would love to have a further conversation on that. But I think that the
We
key
can.
for me while I'm here in this role
Yeah.
is to talk about the border security piece and not make it and not conflate it. Because here's what's happening. Our congressmen, our mainstream media, the majority of people conflate immigration with border security. And Congress does it to continue to fuel their political races every 2 years, right? Well, we would have secured the border if it wasn't for those other people, so vote for me again. Take that emotion out of it, make it a national security issue to keep bad people and bad things from coming in, and then keep that emotion out, because when you bring an immigration and you bring emotion to, because we all have an immigration story somewhere in our heritage, that you can have a victim and a boogeyman. The victim is the poor migrant, and the boogeyman becomes the border patrol, and the big bad government doesn't want to help. So focus on protecting America by securing the border. And until that is done, to the desire needed by the local communities and the agents that are doing the job, then and only then should you move to how are we going to solve this overwhelmed, oversaturated immigration system that needs to be revamped, at least modernized for 2024, because we still have visa quotas from the 60s, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the last thing I just would hit on that is, so much of the talk is, when people talk about the border, they immediately talk about immigration. And we really have to look at this from a national security perspective, because the hotspots that are happening all over the world, to think that can't happen here, to think that somebody is ridiculous. And your first line of defense is your U.S. Border Patrol agents. Our military is watching from above and around the world, but we don't always know everything that's going up through the gut. And it's going to be those agents that are going to see that first sign of something isn't right. So look at this from a border security and national security perspective, not immigration, because immigration is designed to come through the right channels, through the ports of entry, whether it's air, land, or sea, not crossing through a mountain in the desert of Arizona. That's illegal. And that is a security vulnerability. So that's what I would do, besides have you set up the Lollapalooza of the day. It's going to be
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I know it was a long-winded answer. But
no.
There's so much to it, though. There's so much to it.
There is a lot to it. Yeah, we could go on and on. I'd love to. We continue this another time. I've held you hostage for over an hour. Chris Clem, you're out there doing speaking stuff, right?
Yeah, I spend the majority of my time going across the country, speaking to different groups about the facts. See, we don't really get into some of the theories, but just about here's what's happened over the course of my career, and what's happened over the the last few years that's impacted all of America. I'm involved in a couple foundations, where we're working on the helping the mental health and morale of our law enforcement, and then some others with riptidesociety.org is one we deal with foster children and foster families. And then, I spend a lot of time working with a machine learning and AI company where we're combating online trafficking and sextortion, because human trafficking and sextortion is happening on every social platform out there. And it's killing our people, and it's victimizing people unnecessarily. And so that's that 27 plus years of law enforcement in me that says, hey, I can give more. And so that's what, besides going to concerts, Jim, getting a full lineup here, I got to say, when we met in Phoenix, and my
Yeah.
wife was like, "Oh my gosh, it's time for the news," and it was Gunnar Olsen. It was her favorite skit, and she, well, mine is actually, by the way, is Party in Your Stomach. I
Yeah.
mean that
Yeah. It's an
that's
old.
my favorite. But she loved the SNL Gunnar Olsen, right? That was
Gunnar
Gunnar.
Olsen.
Yeah.
Love that. I love her not as much as you, but I love because that was my all-time favorite. That was
Yeah, oh,
beyond
awesome.
Goat
Yeah,
Boy, beyond Joe Pitt. Gunnar
yeah,
Olsen. I had a
yeah.
whole thing for Gunnar Olsen, but
Yeah,
whatever.
that was awesome. Well, you can see a
Thank
little
you.
bit in my background. I'm a big Kiss guy,
I
so there's
see
not
that. I see
a
that.
day go by that I don't wear a Kiss shirt somewhere. But
All right.
yeah, this was great. There's a lot of things to talk about. This is not something that is there's not a silver bullet to the solution because it's people,
Yeah, it's a lot.
and there's so many people involved, right?
Yeah, there truly
But
is, man. I
I
appreciate
think it's awesome that somebody like yourself with your background, with your audience, to have a conversation that's truly serious, that impacts not only every American but people around the world,
it.
and bringing that to your audience. And just again, maybe like I say, it's important for me. I like when we have a question that causes me to pause. If maybe the topic of looking at this from a national security versus immigration, not conflating the two, causes some people to pause and think that, hey, we got to do better. There's a bigger force working behind us, or against us, but what we can control or have influence on, we need to look at this in the short term and how we can make a difference. And that's shoring up this border and making sure that we can, people come through the front door, not sneaking into the back door.
I love it, man. Chris, thanks for coming on. Chris CLEM, everyone. Look up his you have social media? You have
Yeah. So
get all
at
that stuff.
CLEM official, yeah,
Okay.
that's my X account that has more professional stuff, and then
Yeah.
Clemster71 on Instagram has a little bit of both. That's usually more of my concerts and my Pitbull stuff, but yeah,
Right, we'll put it all up there. We'll put it all
yeah,
up there. I wish you
yeah,
the best, man. Good hanging out. Safe journeys,
yeah,
and I'll see you next time down there in
yeah,
Arizona. Thank you, Chris.
yeah. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Have a good one. Chris CLEM, everybody, giving us a little info on the border stuff and how we look at it all. I'll bring it into as I grew up with heavy metal. I'm gonna bring this to one of the greatest. This band is incredible. Okay, this is how I look at things at this time in our lives. The band. Now stick with me on this. The band Megadeth has a song called "Peace Sells," and I gotta honestly say, this is where I'm at. And I think this is where a lot of Americans are at. And you look at this, and my favorite line from Peace Sells is if there's a new way, I I could speak for a lot of Americans, and when we say, "Oh, I'll be the first in line," but it better work this time. Because in my opinion, I love the words like, what do you mean I don't believe in God? I talk to him every day. What do you mean I don't support your system, your government, whatever we're supposed to be, you know, grab the flag and support it all. I go to court when I have to. What do you mean I don't pay my bills on time? This is such peace sells, but who's buying? Thank you, Dave Mustaine and Megadeth, for one of the greatest metal songs in history that made me think as a young man. Even that video, when they're watching the video, the Peace Sells video. Again, all we have is love. All we have is one another. All we have is to wish love upon every human being. But you have to understand the boogeyman exists, the demons exist, people paid by the monster of greed. Money will buy murder. Do you understand that? Do you understand money will buy murder? If you can't comprehend that, you really need to take a moment. And if you don't think for 1 second, there's people in the CIA, the FBI, the thing, about a thing, anybody can get paid off to be a bad guy or to do something immoral. Immoral. I don't know what's going down the border. I don't know. I don't know where it's all going. But I don't, when you need to stop thinking of it as politics. You need to stop thinking it's politics. And if they truly are, whether it's this administration or any administration, is putting our lives in danger, it's time for them to go. How long do we sit and listen and take it? And I'm not talking of violence. Don't pay your taxes. Let's start with that. Make an uproar. Show me the law where we need to pay our taxes for what you're stealing our money for. Taxes is a nice word for stealing your money. Someone that shows up and goes, hey, I don't work, but I'm taking 40% of your money. And I'm going to do whatever I want with that money. Can you imagine what you can do with that money that you work so hard for? You work so hard for? Why have we allowed government? Look up the word government and tell me what it truly means. Even go in the Latin words of what that truly means. It's not a good thing. I think we have come upon, yes, the Great Awakening, but now it's time for the great movement, whatever that may be, but it has to come from a loving place. It has to come from a loving place. I'm not sure how it looks, but the boogeyman exists. Stand up to the boogeyman. Let your voices be heard. Stop with the politics. They're all corrupt. They're all corrupt. I was such a big Jordan fan. I was such a big lot of guys fan. And then I saw they have dual citizenship in other countries. Most of them in just one country, which I have nothing against that country. It just bothers me that, I'm sorry, but now, in my opinion, now I'm very leery of why you fund a war or you fund countries, especially when you have dual citizenship there. That really bothers me. When I could do something for my children in my country, at my house, in my state. People, stop the politics. They're all individuals. And it's time to look at all of them as individuals. And what are they doing? Are they doing something good for you or bad for you? Stop with the politics. Individuality. Case closed. Doesn't matter if they're Republican, Democrat. It doesn't matter. It's a con artist show. And the minute you understand that, the minute you wake up, and the minute you start standing up and going, no, we're done with you. We're done with you. We're done with you. It's time for you to move on. Just pack all your stuff and get out of here. Get out of here. For the vile, disturbing thing you've done to humanity and our country and everything else. All you need is love. I wish you all the best. Do something beautiful. Do something that makes you wonderful. And spend time in nature. Take a walk. Do something so your spirit can have some peace. See you next week on the Breuniverse.
Take a look around and what do you see? Lock the date down tonight, we'll make it history. Hey, this is Jim Breuer, and I got my own Patreon page, and hopefully you'll check it out. Live comedy concert streamed once a month. Early access to the Breuniverse podcast every single week, and have bonus footage and bonus segments. I promise you I'm not going to let you down. Go check out my official Jim Breuer Patreon page, and I'll see you there.